careful what books you pick up in a library or a store, because sometimes they come with curses attached. Written in the early 1600s by Martin de Leon Cardenas, The Orphan Story is a novel about a young Spaniard who heads to the Americas in search of fortune. And while that sounds like every adventure story ever, there's a bit of an outlier. There's a bit of a darkness that lurks within its pages that led to the novel not being published until 2018. The first draft was a 328-page manuscript, slightly yellowed, slightly worn and aged, missing a couple of pages. Belinda Palacios, a Peruvian scholar who edited the book for 2 years, she was apparently warned by multiple people about it. So it was first set to appear in 1621 under the pen name of André de Leon, but never made it to press due to the presidential atmosphere at the time in Sicily. So the manuscript then sat in the Hispanic Society of America until 1965, when Belinda rediscovered it, and she learned many attempts to publish it had happened, giving rise to rumors that malevolent energy lurked among the almost 400 pages, causing the people working on it to, die. So in an interview she commented on the reported deaths, saying one was from strange diseases, another was a car accident, and something else. So Belinda had heard from other professors she was working with to publish the book. One of them specialized in colonial letters from the Andean regions and Mexico. This person went by the name of Raquel Chang Rodriguez. Now these letters describe how Antonio Rodriguez Monino and William C. Bryant both died before finishing their editions of the book. And that's why the manuscript is believed to be cursed. She's like, yeah, that's why this is taken so long to publish, because if you work on it, that's the end of your life. Okay, don't touch it. Most books would be happy with a gift card or dinner for their birthday, but Abraham the Mage, or Abraham, depending on who you ask, decided to give his son a book full of mythical curses. Yay! So this book tells the story of an Egyptian mage named Abraham, or Abramelin, who taught in a system of magic to Abraham of Worms, a Jew in Worms, Germany. The system of magic from this book regained popularity in the 19th and 20th centuries, partly due to Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mather's translation, which dubbed it the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abraham the Mage. So ever since it was translated to English, this 15th century novel has had a reputation for being cursed. Now there are several theories why, but a lot of folks believe it has to do with the mage's belief that everybody has their own unique personal demon. And throughout the book, there are instructions for rituals and supernatural feats to bring your demons under control. So internally, the text dates itself to the year 1458, and the book exists in the form of 12 manuscripts and an early printed edition. Now the earliest manuscripts are two versions that date from about 1608, are written in German, while another two manuscripts are from about 1700 and 1750. The practical magic found in both Book 3 of the French text and Book 4 of the German tends to center around a set of talismans composed of magic word squares. These are similar to traditional magic squares, though the latter are usually composed of numbers, whereas these ones contain letters. Commonly, word squares are used as puzzles or teaching aids. So in the context of all of this, the focus becomes mystical, so each square should contain words or names that relate to the magical goal of the square. A parallel is found in the famous Sator Arapotenet Abra Rotas word square, an altered version of which is also found amongst these squares. So you combine a cursed book and math puzzles, and you get no thank you, moving on. I feel like calling something an untitled grimoire should be scary enough on its own, but allow me to elaborate. These manuscripts were believed to be written in the early 1900s, as their first library appearance was around the 1920s. The books originated when a Wiccan high priestess called Persephone Adrastea Irene recorded her family's spiritual history of being an American witch of Swedish and English ancestry. These manuscripts record Persephone's witchy history that she reworked through all of her adult life, incorporating her mother's grimoire into them as well. So the first book contains about 250 pages of spells, incantations, curses, and enchantments, as well as corresponding information on gems, planets, rites, potions, and even exorcisms. The second book includes about 150 to 200 pages of alchemy and chemistry recipes, cures, perfumes and balms, nerve tonics, and even hairspray recipes. So the first book is believed to carry the curse heavier than its counterpart, seeing as Persephone's spells are believed in Wiccan culture to contain more power than most other records due to the embodiment of herself within them. Originally the books belonged to Alice Montserrat, who moved to the UK in the 1920s to work with famed occultist Aleister Crowley. Later on they both went on to work with the Golden Dawn Order and printed their works and publications as occultism raised into the modern world. So even though Alice did little reporting on the cursed lore over these books, she did make notes as to why she and others within the order believed the curse carried some serious weight. She wrote an inscription warning all those who read it, saying, "To those not of the craft, the reading of this book is forbidden. Proceed no further, or justice will exact a swift and terrible retribution, and you will surely suffer at the hand of the craft." Now this was written not only in English, but other languages as well, because they were like, we really want to warn people, stay away. The Grand Grimoire grimoire is a black magic grimoire, and different editions date this specific one to maybe 1521, 1522, 1421, but it was probably written during the early 19th century. Some experts suggest that maybe 1702 was when the first edition may have been created, and a Bibliothèque Bleue version, similar to a chapter book of the text, might have been published in 1750. I know, that's a lot of dates, I'm sorry. The introductory chapter was authored by Antonia Venetia da Rabina, who gathered his information from the original writings of King Solomon. So a lot of the material of this grimoire derives from the Key of Solomon and Lesser Key of Solomon, which are grimoires attributed to, you guessed it, the king. Also known as Le Dragon Rouge or the Red Dragon, this book contains instructions on how to summon Lucifer or Lucifuge Rofocal for the purpose of forming a deal with the devil. So the 19th century French occultist Eliphas Lévy, author of Dogmes et Rituels de la Haute Magie, claimed the contemporary edition of Le Dragon Rouge was a counterfeit of a true older Grand Grimoire. So the overall work divided into two books. Book number 1, it has instructions for summoning a demon, and for the construction of tools with which to force the demon to do one's bidding. Book number 2 is divided further into two parts. The Sanctum Regnum and Secrets de l'Art Magique du Grand Grimoire. The Sanctum Regnum contains instructions for making a pact with the demon, allowing one to command the spirit without tools that were required by Book 1, but at a greater risk. Secrets contain simple spells and rituals that you can employ after having performed the ritual of Book number 1. Some editions contain a short text between the two parts, known as Le Secret Magique ou Le Grand Art de Pouvoir Parler aux Morts, or in English, the magic secret or the grand art of being able to speak with the dead, which deals with necromancy. The book describes several demons as well as the rituals to summon them, just all this to make that pact with them. It also details several spells for winning a lottery, talking to spirits, being loved, making oneself invisible, and so forth and so on. This book mentions 3 greater demons, which are similarly prioritized in the Grimorium Verum, and sidebar, in the English translation of the work, the demons are referenced by the more generic term of spirits, which is a term I know a lot of modern Satanists prefer. And finally for today, the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic, or MMDM, or Liber Incantatorium Exorcimorium et Fascinatorium Vererium, is a 15th century grimoire manuscript whose name I totally just butchered. The text, composed in Latin, is largely concerned with demonology and necromancy. Richard Kiekefer edited the text of the manuscript in 1998 under the title Forbidden Rites, a necromancer's manual of the 15th century. Portions of the text in English translation are presented in Forbidden Rites as well, embedded within the author's essays and explanations on the Munich Manual in specific and grimoires in general. The Russian translation of this Latin grimoire was published in 2019, and the first English translation was only published in 2023. There is only one known surviving manuscript of the original manual, which is almost complete, minus the first 2 folios that describe the beginning of rituals. The rest of the grimoire contains complete instructions for the invocation of demons, such as Satan, Lilith, Aseroth, and Samael, as well as the supposed attainment of favors and supernatural powers. Some of the spells allow for, you guessed it, obtaining the love of another, achieving invisibility, acquiring wealth and treasures, or gaining knowledge. The text is accompanied by over 40 illustrations of magic circles and symbols to be used in rituals. You've got a list of 11 demons, similar to the ones from the Ars Goetia, and as you guessed it, most of the text is in Latin, minus a little bit of German and Italian. Heinrich Himmler's personal grimoire. If you're unfamiliar with the name, Double H was one of the leading members of the Yahtzee party, so my verbiage might get interesting for the next little bit. Double H founded the Ahnenerbe, which was a pseudo-scientific organization that was active between 1935 to 1945 and devoted to the task of promoting the racial beliefs held by the Yahtzees. Himmler was very much drawn to the occult and tied this interest into his racist philosophy, looking for proof of Aryan and Nordic racial superiority from ancient times. He promoted a cult of ancestor worship, particularly among members of the SS, as a way to keep the race pure and provide immortality to the nation. Viewing the SS as an order along the lines of the Teutonic Knights, he had them take over the church of said order in Vienna in 1939. He began the process of replacing Christianity with a new moral code that rejected humanitarianism and challenged the Christian concept of marriage. Himmler modified a variety of existing customs to emphasize the elitism and central role of the SS. An SS naming ceremony was to replace baptism, marriage ceremonies were to be altered, a separate SS funeral ceremony was to be held in addition to Christian ceremonies, and SS-centric celebrations of the summer and winter solstices were instituted. Historian Nicholas Goodrick Clark analyzed all of this in his 1985 book, The Occult Roots of Yahtzeeism, in which he argued that there were in fact links between some ideals of Ariosophy, and Yahtzee ideology. He also analyzed the problems of the numerous popular occult historiography books written on the topic. In Goodrick Clark's review, the Ariosophist movement built on the early ideas of the Volkisch movement, a traditionalist pan-German response to industrialization and urbanization, but associated the problems of modernism, specifically with the supposed misdeeds of Freemasonry, Kabbalah, and let's see if I can get this one right, folks, Rosicrucianism, in order to prove the modern world was based on false and evil principles. The Ariosophist ideals and symbols filtered through several anti-Semitic and nationalist groups in late Wilhelmian Germany, from which the early Yahtzee party emerged in Munich after the First World War. He demonstrated quite a few links between two Ariosophists and Heinrich Himmler. An article titled Schmittler's Forgotten Library by Timothy Ryback, published in The Atlantic, mentions a book from the Dictator's Private Library, authored by Ernst Schertl. Now, Ernst, whose interests were flagellation, dance, occultism, nudism, and quinky things, had also been active as an activist for sexual liberation before 1933. Now, supposedly there is some remnant of Yahtzee magic that can be gleaned from a study of ice magic, and through the work of Blavatsky. Nevertheless, I wouldn't recommend bringing that strain of magic back into the world, never mind finding Himmler's secret grimoire. No thanks. Next up is less a singular spellbook, but more so any grimoire or spellbook that promises an expertise in B-L-O-O-D magic. Sorry folks, the interwebs are not a fan of the B word, so I have to find substitutes for the redness that pours out of a human wound. When it comes to practitioners of said magic, it's similar, if not exactly the same, as to how the Aztecs wielded power. This might sound kind of cliche, but power like that always comes with a price, which is the reason the Aztecs killed so many people. They avoided the cost by using prisoners, or folks they deemed the lowest of the low. With so much death at ritualistic points where the veil is thin, they could commune or even summon dark entities to the physical realm. So while the idea of forbidden knowledge may seem fun or rebellious or even glamorous, there's things you just shouldn't mess with in the first place. If you're looking for a specific title to avoid, one that I've talked about plenty on here that touches on the subject is the Grimorium Verum. Translated as the Grimoire of Truth, this text has a reputation that goes without saying. It originated in the 18th century and is part of European magical tradition. And it's not for the faint of heart. A Grimorium Verum is essentially a guidebook, but not the kind you'd find on your local bookstore's bestseller shelf. Nah, this is more like a how-to manual for dealing with entities not exactly on the Christmas card list. The inclusion of red fluids in its rituals is one of its most chilling aspects, if you ask me. I don't really like seeing redness anywhere. It's not the kind of magic you see in fairy tales. This is the stuff of dark alleys and ancient rites. The text details ceremonies involving the shedding of said fluids to summon and control otherworldly beings. It's a kind of forbidden knowledge that's been whispered about in hushed tones throughout history. Like, it's just like you hear about it, you don't talk about it. Also, it doesn't stop at fluid exchanges. Like, it's an overall comprehensive guide to dealing with demons. Like, if you want to make a pact with a demon, yeah, this is the place for it. It's got the instructions for creating a pact, specific prayers and invocations. Technically, it's like a step-by-step guide for anybody seeking supernatural assistance. Whether that's a good idea or not, that's up for debate. So why was this banned? And why should you not be reading it? Well, let's just say the church, who we all love, wasn't exactly thrilled about people trying to summon demons on a random Tuesday afternoon. The church authorities saw these texts as a threat, not just to the spiritual well-being of their practitioners, but also to the established order. If there's one thing we know about the church, they don't like being threatened. After all, summoning demons and dabbling in fluid magic doesn't exactly align with a Sunday sermon. Not that I personally agree with the church on most things, but this might be the one time I do. You don't want a demon at Thanksgiving. Okie dokie folks, are you ready for some more fun cult stuff? Okay, so you've all heard about Scientology, right? The cult that pretty much owns Tom Cruise and a bunch of other celebrities. Well, it turns out that their original founder wrote a book that he alleged caused people to take their own lives. And if that isn't magically inclined in some way, I don't know what is. It prompts reflection on the power dynamics between the written word, belief systems, and the vulnerability of the human psyche. So what is it about this text that can drive individuals to the brink? Well, apparently it's the allure of the unknown, the manipulation of belief systems, maybe a combination of factors that pushes people beyond the boundaries of reason. So we've talked about this guy before, L. Ron Hubbard. He was discussing the Atlantis civilization, and he claimed to have gained this knowledge through his own research and experiences. Am I gonna pretend like I know how he experienced those things? Nope. But here's the thing. This piece of writing has been almost entirely erased from the internet. If you're more tech savvy than I am, feel free to add links in the comments section, but outside of venturing into the dark web, I couldn't find a copy of this specific work anywhere, or a listing on any official record of all of this. The erasure of almost all mentions of this book from the vast expanse of the internet only adds to the mystery in my mind. In this crazy digital age, where I can Google whatever I want, the ability to expunge a work from the digital realm raises quite a few questions about the extent of control over the narrative, not to sound like my university profs. It's as if the book itself has become this elusive specter, lingering in the shadows of cyberspace. cyberspace. Now, I'm not completely oblivious to the control that present-day Scientology has in our society, but it's really scary to see it in practice. Like, their attempt to erase any traces of this work raises so many ethical questions about the control of information. In this digital age, where information is considered a cornerstone of freedom, the deliberate suppression of a narrative kind of is like, what the heck? Like, what other forbidden books are there? Just like waiting in the shadows that I don't even know about, waiting to disturb some minds out there. Well, there's the Shams al-Ma'arif, or Shams al-Ma'arif wa Lata'if al-Awarif, which is a 13th century grimoire centered on Arabic magic and has claimed to be a manual for achieving esoteric spirituality. I apologize from the bottom of my heart if I butchered that pronunciation anyway, I promise I did practice. It was written by the scholar Ahmed al-Buni, who wrote it while living in Algeria. He passed around 1225 Common Era. It was written by the scholar Ahmed al-Buni, who wrote it while living in Algeria, and he passed around 1225 Common Era. Now, the book is a patchwork of bits and pieces of the author's authentic works, and texts by other authors. Scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah have criticized the book and labeled al-Buni as a deluded double worshipper. Good to know that across all religions over time, some things never changed. Now, in terms of more modern examples, that was a common assumption from Ed and Lorraine Warren. You know, the demonologist that I quote all the time. Look, I believe half of what they investigated was real, the other half was them making a living, which at the end of the day, I have to give some respect to. Well, minus viewing alternative lifestyles outside of Christianity as a sin. Okay, pardon me, sorry, I get a little sidetracked. In contemporary form, the book consists of 2 volumes, the Shams al-Ma'arif al-Kubra and the Shams al-Ma'arif al-Sughra, with the former being the larger of the two. The first few chapters introduce the reader to magic squares, and the combination of numbers and the alphabet that are believed to bring magical effect, which the author claims is the only way to communicate with jinn, angels, and spirits. The table of contents that were introduced in the later printed editions of the work contain a list of unnumbered chapters, which stretched to a number of 40 by the way. However, prior to the printing press and various other standardizations, there were 3 independent volumes that circulated, each one differing in length. While being popular, it also carries a notorious reputation for being suppressed and banned for much of Islamic history, ergo how it found its way to our list today. Don't read it. However, it continues to persist in being read and studied up to present day, despite its questionable veracity and negative implications. Some Sufi orders, such as the Naqshbandi Haqqani order, have recognized its legitimacy and use as a compendium for the occult and hold it in high respect. Now, another title by the same author, the title having been translated to the Source of the Essentials of Wisdom, is considered its companion text. In terms of translation, although the overall formal translation to English hasn't really happened yet, there have been numerous renditions of a few of the more popular rituals found within the main treatise, as well as those that line its accompanying text. So, don't bother, don't go near it. Okay folks, I think I'm gonna end today with the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic, the MMDM, or Liber Incantationum Exorcium et Fascinatorium Varium. Let me try that again. The MMDM, or, well, let's see if I can get this folks, Liber Incantationum Exorcimorum et Fascinatorium Variarum, is a 15th century grimoire manuscript. The text, composed in Latin, is largely concerned with demonology and necromancy. Richard Kiefer edited the text of the manuscript in 1998 under the title Forbidden Rites, a necromancer's manual of the 15th century. Portions of the text in English translation are presented in Forbidden Rites as well, embedded within the author's essays and explanations on the Munich Manual in specific and grimoires in general. The Russian translation of this Latin grimoire was published in 2019, while the first English translation only came out last year. Now, there is only one known surviving manuscript of the original Munich Manual, which is almost complete except for the first 2 folios that describe the beginning of the first ritual. The rest of the grimoire contains complete instructions for the invocation of demons such as, let's see, Satan, Lilith, Asaroth, and Samael, as well as the supposed attainment of favors and supernatural powers from them. Some of the spells allow for obtaining the love of a woman, achieving invisibility, acquiring wealth and treasures, or gaining knowledge. The text is accompanied by over 40 illustrations of magic circles and symbols to be used in said rituals. So, for example, page 130 to 133 of the text includes a list of 11 demons, similar to the Ars Goetia, and since there's only 11, I guess I could list them off. So we've got Count/Duke Barbarus, Duke Cassin, President/Count Otius, King Curson, Duke Alugor, Prince Tub, President Volak, Duke Generon, Marquis Tuveries, President Hani, and Marquis Sukax. I promise I did my best. Most of the text is in Latin, which is not a language I speak, with the exception of 2 appended materials in German and Italian. So let's see, we got messing with demons and manipulation of others to your will? Yeah, no thanks, that sounds like a recipe for disaster. And that brings us to the end of our time, and yeah, I don't think I'll be adding any of these titles to my personal collection anytime soon.
Number 5. The Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage. The Book of Abramelin, or more formally, the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, is a Jewish magic text that is thought to date back at some point in the 14th or 15th century. Now, it wasn't this initial publication that gave it such a notoriety. There wasn't really a lot of book reviewing going on back then. It was when it was upheld by the 19th and 20th century magicians who made up the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which kind of sounds like a fake bad guy from an RPG, but is a British secret society dedicated to the practice, research, and upholding of old occult magic ways. Can't be that secret though, because I'm talking about it. One of the founders of the Golden Dawn, one SLM Matters, created the first ever English translation of the book in the 1890s, drawing from a 17th century French translation. Mathers' translation became the definite magic text of the 19th century, eventually helping inspire Aleister Crowley, the legendary occultist and fixture of one of the best Ozzy Osbourne songs ever. There's all kinds of spells and magic inside the text. Some highlights include spells on how to conjure someone into a donkey, summon a monkey to do your bidding, how to bring forth spirits to fetch you goods. The key point in the text, however, is an epic multi-month ritual that, if performed correctly, will allow the sorcerer to commune with their guardian angel other half. The book posits that everyone's guardian angel is another part of their essence, a spiritual other. The ritual involves, I don't really know how to say this politely. You have to get blissfully intimate with the angel, and once this honeymoon period is over, the caster then has to summon up and conquer unredeemed spirits of the infernal regions of hell to conquer them, and then will be able to be master of the spirit domain. That all sounds pretty complicated though, honestly, so all things considered, maybe it's for the best that this one's locked away. I don't really need to mess with magic, that's above my pay grade, and I'm not looking to get too intimate with my significant other guardian angel anytime soon. But if you're looking for more true tales of terror, fake frightening fibs, cursed relics, ancient evils, ancient cryptids, aliens, conspiracies, ghouls, goblins, and way more of this guy, Top 5 Scary is the only place to be. So stay subscribed, make sure you hit that little bell so you don't miss a scream, but, and I know this is a big ask, do that at the end of this video, because I got 4 more cursed books coming for you right now. Number 4, the Codex Gigas. When it comes to cursed and demonic books, the Codex Gigas is one of the biggest ones around. Like, literally. Codex Gigas translates to giant book, which isn't a very scary name, but when you see the size of this behemoth, it starts to make a bit more sense. The thing is massive, 2 feet long. While giant oversized illuminated manuscripts were fairly common around this era, this one stood out for its immense size and also the impressively scary rumors surrounding the cursed text. It's occasionally been dubbed Satan's Bible due to the interesting legend behind its origin. Now, supposedly the story goes that a monk by the name of Herman the Recluse, which same, honestly. Anyway, Herman was condemned to death for heresy and was to be walled up alive and starved. In a desperate plea to save himself, Herman tried to convince the prior and the abbot that if he could pen a manuscript to honor God's glory and contained all of human knowledge and history in one night, that he could be let free. The abbot agreed, thinking that this was, of course, an impossible task. Well, he didn't know that Herman was the John Wick of penmanship, who wrote until midnight, wearing his fingertips down, and in a moment of desperation, made a prayer to Lucifer, and asked for his eternal soul in exchange for the book's completion in order to repent for his heresy. I totally get it, you know? I've done some pretty crazy things trying to write my script in time for a deadline too. I sold my soul earlier this week to get Top 5 UFOs in on time. I get it. Now, not poking any holes in your logic here though, Herman, but I will say maybe selling your soul to the devil is part of the reason you got into this mess, because that actually sounds a ton like heresy. A variation of the legend states that Herman worked for years on the manuscript, day and night, but still asked for the devil's assistance anyway, the lazy bastard. Anyway, the legend states that Satan signed the Bible with an illustration of himself. The ego on that guy. The book contains a birth of information. Like they said, it was supposed to be everything humanity had attained up to that point. Now these days, the Codex Gigas is preserved in the Natural Museum in Sweden, where you can admire the line work of Herman the Recluse and his ghost author, Satan. Number 3, the Grand Grimoire. Our next entry has been formally referred to as the Gospel of Satan. It's different from Satan's Bible, and is said to be a cursed book whose knowledge had to be sealed away to protect humanity. So this might be the most dangerous book ever published after Hop on Pop. The Grand Grimoire was said to have been penned by a priest in the 16th century who was possessed by a litany of demons who compelled the man to put their knowledge to paper. Acting as a scribe for the demons, the man wrote everything they knew about dark incantations, spells, instructions on how to cast rituals, how to bind a demon to make it do your bidding. Wait, a demon wrote this book? A demon gave instructions about how it wants to be bound to a human and serve humans? That's a freaky little demon. That's not all though. There's a step-by-step recipe for a little necromancy if you're down to dabble in some dark arts and make some bones dance to your rhythm. The book really covers all the fun stuff you've been told not to do. Now it's not all brimstone and hellfire too. There's rituals on how to manipulate your luck, how to conduct a seance, and I think this is adorable. But there's even ways to make people love you in the book. Now, a little dating tip from your friends at Top 5 Scary. I will say, if you need a demon's help to make them like you, that might not be the most successful relationship, but you do you. Don't let me get in the way. Now, if all of this is sounding pretty appealing, and I don't blame you because it all does sound really cool, just know that the book is considered high treason. Even so much as cracking the spine is considered equivalent to selling your soul, so maybe hold off on that Amazon order for a bit. Besides, because of the book's cursed reputation, the original copy is said to be locked away in the Vatican's famous secret archives, and no matter how many times you ask, they're not going to let you look at it, even if you say you just want to take a quick little peek at the illustrations. I know, so unfair. Ugh, I don't even have any late fees. Let me take the book out. Number 2, the Untitled Grimoires. You think a book with a name is scary? Imagine a book without a name. Coming up next on our list of haunted nighttime reading is the Untitled Grimoires. It was so scary they couldn't even deign to give it a name. The books are said to originate from a Wiccan high priestess named Persephone Adarasta Irene, who has one of the coolest names I've ever heard. She recorded a book of her family's spiritual history. These manuscripts record Persephone's Wiccan history that she reworked all through her adult life. The first book contains around 250 pages of spells, incantations, curses, enchantments, and some information on gems, planets, rites, potions, and exorcisms. Basically anything and everything that a fledgling sorceress or warlock could ever possibly want. The second book is a little more light, the sequel's a bit of a letdown. It's just alchemy, chemistry, cures, perfumes, and tonics. Now, the first book is believed to be the one to carry the curse, as Persephone's spells are believed in Wiccan culture to contain more power than most other records due to her embodiment of her own soul inside the book. They say all authors put a bit of soul in their work, and it seems as if the Wiccan high priestess took that a bit more literally than most of us do. These books would eventually find their way into the possession of one Alice Montserrat, a close working associate of Aleister Crowley, who you know from earlier in the video as one of the most famous practicers of the occult and lover of white horses. Montserrat left an inscription in the first page of the book, warning to all of those who open it, "To those not of the craft, the reading of this book is forbidden. Proceed no further, or justice will exact a swift and terrible retribution, and you will surely suffer at the hands of the craft." This was written in several languages to make sure it came across to just about anybody who opened the book. Now, I'm kind of unclear on that. I don't know, some of the old words, the old English is kind of confusing me. Does that mean the book should be read like it's good? I don't know. Not really getting that. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot today on demonic dictionaries and evil literature is the infamous Lesser Key of Solomon. Make no mistake from the title, even though it's a Lesser Key of Solomon, it is not a lesser evil. It's an anonymously authored grimoire on demonology, so not written by Solomon. It's also known as Clavicula Salomonis Regis, or Lemegeton, is a grimoire. It's a book of magic that gained significant prominence in occult literature. Now, the grimoire is attributed to King Solomon, the biblical figure renowned for his wisdom and mastery over supernatural forces. It's believed to have been compiled in the 17th century, though it draws upon earlier occult tradition and texts. The Lesser Key consists of several sections, or books, each focusing on a different aspect of magic and summoning. The most well-known is the Ars Goetia, which represents descriptions and instructions for evoking 72 demons or spirits, each with its own unique powers and abilities, kind of like Pokemon. These demons are said to be bound by King Solomon and can be summoned and controlled by skilled practitioners. practitioners. Other sections of the Lesser Key of Solomon includes fan favorites like the Ars Theurgia Gorisha, Ars Paulina, Ars Almadel, and Ars Notoria. These sections delve into topics such as angelic invocations, the use of talismans and amulets, and rituals for obtaining divine knowledge and wisdom. Now, the grimoire has had a profound influence on various occult and magical traditions, including ceremonial magic, demonology, and the practice of spirit conjuration. It's been studied and referenced by countless practitioners, scholars, and scary YouTubers throughout history. Now, goes without saying, this is a potentially dangerous text. The act of summoning and working with entities described in the grimoire is not for the faint of heart, and really should be saved for those with a bit of spiritual expertise under their wizard hat. In conclusion, significant grimoire, very, very scary. I'm probably going to leave it closed for now. Its influence and legacy have persisted through the centuries, captivating the curiosity of those seeking esoteric knowledge and supernatural power, or those who are just kind of curious about the whole thing.
Number 5, the yellow wallpaper. Okay, the yellow wallpaper. I first read this book when I was in 5th grade, and I do know that it is a lot of required reading for a lot of people. Like, you'd read it in 9th or 10th grade. So you may be thinking now, oh my god, V, why would you put this on the list? It's not cursed, we can all read it. It's a weird book. And it's a good book, a really flipping good book. And I know that we have a lot of videos on this channel of books that are cursed that you cannot read and that you will never get the chance to read. So I wanted to create a video about books that are going to mess up your head and twist your psychology into a complete knot. But if a complete mind twist doesn't interest you and you would prefer hearing about the more supernatural aspects of Top 5 Scary, just search books on our channel's search bar and you will get a plethora of videos to choose from. Today, I really want to talk about things that we can all relate to. But if you are interested in some reading that will mess your mind up and leave you scared and thinking for the rest of your life, definitely stick around because we are about to get into some really cool and twisted reading. So, number 4, or number 5 and 4 now because I rambled too much. Let's try this again. The yellow wallpaper. This book is a masterclass in imagery and descriptive devices because wow, you feel like you are in this room. It follows a woman who is placed into a room that is lined wall to wall with yellow wallpaper, and slowly, page by page, she begins to go insane, describing more outlandish and detailed scenes being played out in the lines of her wallpaper. Throughout the story, her descriptions get so much more in-depth and twisted, and you begin to feel like you are going insane with her. Every single word, every single thing that she is imagining, you are seeing full on face to face. It's like you're looking it in the eyes. And I have aphantasia, so I actually cannot visualize anything in my head. Like, you say think of an apple and I don't see an apple, it's just darkness. But somehow this book was able to surpass my biological evolution, and I was able to imagine everything. Every word, every description, it was being burnt into my eyelids. And there are very few books that can do that for me, which is how you know that this is an insanely weird and well written story. I really recommend giving this a read. It will mess with your mind and you will never ever want to have yellow wallpaper again. Which, okay, interestingly enough, this book actually made me want to have yellow wallpaper when I was in the 5th grade. So I don't know, maybe this job is like where I was destined to work, because I don't think many people after reading this book would yearn so desperately to have yellow wallpaper. Number 3, I have no mouth and I must scream. I don't even know where to start with this one. This book left me with such a disturbed and upset feeling right into the pit of my stomach. The story follows a group of 5 people, the last people alive in a post-apocalyptic Earth, that are being eternally tormented in a computer called AM. Okay, so the first time I read this, I was pretty confused, up until I would say probably the 2nd page, and then I started getting really into it. But I think you're supposed to be confused so you can really settle into the story and the world, and all of the ideas within. The book centers around 5 characters who are essentially stuck in an advanced AI computer called AM in a post-apocalyptic world. The computer is vengeful and torments them eternally. They have been stuck here, unaging, essentially immortalized for 109 years. Allegedly. It's kind of hard to know for sure because the computer like messes with their mind and time a lot. Every single day for these humans is filled with the computer psychologically psychologically, physically tormenting them in every way imaginable in insanely disturbing and creative ways. The book ends with the character who we are hearing the story from realizing that the only way to end the torment they are experiencing and to hurt the computer in some way as like revenge is through their death or by taking away Am's toys. Somehow he ends up being the last one alive. I won't spoil it exactly, but everyone else is dead except for him. Am is very, very upset by this, so Am ensures that for the rest of eternity, he, the last alive, will suffer every day and will never be given the chance to escape through death like the others. He is essentially turned into a living blob, lacking limbs and appendages, lacking ears and eyes and a mouth. He's just a mass of goo. His eye sockets are described as being filled with a white fog. He is stuck unmoving for the rest of his eternal life, which of course brings us to the final line of the book and the title, I have no mouth and I must scream. So yeah, this is an incredibly disturbing book. Cursed, I guess you could say. I would definitely recommend giving the story a read. It is short, but the impact it will have on you is nothing less than long-lasting and permanent. Number 2, The Lottery. I first read this book a couple of months ago in July. It was an English camp retreat that I read it at, which I won't get too much into, but let's just say I did not enjoy that too much. I was one of 2 girls in a group of 18 guys, and they were all years younger than me, and most of them weren't funny and mansplained everything to me, which is my worst nightmare, and it was painful. But actually, from the teachers, it was a very educational experience, and I learned a lot, and one of the things I learned about was this story, The Lottery. It is a short story written by the famous Shirley Jackson, and it definitely makes you think. Upon first read, it definitely gives off Hunger Games vibes, and I'm sorry I said vibes, but there is no other way to explain it. Same vibes. It is a very surprising read. I think you'll be surprised by the ending, but upon rereading it, you kind of realize how brutally obvious every piece of foreshadowing was. But upon the first read, you're left with an uneasy feeling. You do not expect what's to come, especially up until the 3rd page. You really don't realize how uneasy everyone is in the story. You hear about a tradition that other towns are considering canceling. You hear about these very young people going around in groups of friends and picking up pebbles that are being collected in piles after being released from school. You hear casual conversation being exchanged through neighbors. You don't hear the underlying unease that is being sown throughout the crowd of people. Someone goes up to the front of the crowd, and next to a dinky yet looming box, they begin to explain that they will be drawing names, like every year in this town's annual lottery. The reader thinks, oh, a game, a lottery, a winner. This is exciting, this is cool, this is great. But you do not expect the ending. And for me, it was kind of a whoa moment where I had to take a step back and reevaluate where the book had shifted to. It's a great book filled with eerie imagery and explanations, and another that will absolutely stay burned into your mind. Number 1, The Landlady. This book is by one of my all-time favorite authors, Roald Dahl. Responsible for creating some of the most famous stories of all time, like Matilda, The Witches, James and the Giant Peach, The BFG, Lamb to the Slaughter, and so many more. It's no surprising that he would be capable of creating a truly disturbing short story, very worthy of being on this list. So, The Landlady follows a boy named Billy who is starting a new job in a new town. He looks for a place to stay the night when all of a sudden he sees a beautifully charming and warm house advertising itself as a bed and breakfast. It is run by a friendly but odd lady, and only 2 guests had previously stayed there in the past 3 years. We know there have only been 2 guests thanks to a guest book that the old woman makes every single guest who stays there sign, which she tells Billy, and when Billy is signing it, he recognizes the 2 names, which are the only ones on it, but he can't remember where he recognizes them from, though he feels like they were both famous for the same thing, like they were in a newspaper or something for the same thing. I won't spoil anything because uncovering the truth yourself is far more exciting. Throughout the book, you feel an uneasy sense of dread, discomfort, and frustration as the naive main character innocently believes everything he is being told and does not seem to comprehend the idea that he could be in danger. It is an extremely captivating book, and I find the descriptions to be very, very lively. The dialogue is eerie and sets the tone of the story masterfully. This book leaves you with a sinking feeling like no other. If you are looking for a read that will stay in your mind every time you check into a small B&B, which, you know, it's not very common anymore, this is definitely the book for you.
Number 5, The Book of the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage. The Book of Abramelin, or more formally, the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, is an old Jewish magic text that is thought to date back at some point in the 14th or 15th century. Now, it wasn't the initial publication of this book that gave it its notoriety. Instead, it was when it was 19th and 20th century magicians who were in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which is a British secret society dedicated to the practice, research, and upholding of old occult magic ways. But hush hush, you didn't hear that from me. One of the founders of the Golden Dawn, S.L.M. Mathers, created the first ever English translation of the book in the 1890s, drawing from a previously established 17th century French translation. Now, Mathers' translation quickly became the definite magic text of the 19th century, eventually helping inspire Aleister Crowley to inspire his system of magic, the legendary occultist and fixture of one of the best Ozzy Osbourne songs ever. That solo still goes, man. Now, there's all kinds of spells and magic inside this text. Some real highlights include spells on how to conjure somebody and turn them into a donkey, how to summon a monkey to do your bidding, that sounds great, and how to bring forth spirits to fetch you goods. The big key point in this text, however, is an epic, multi-month spanning ritual that, if performed correctly, will allow the sorcerer to commune with their own guardian angel. The book theorizes that everyone has a guardian angel and that they are another part of their essence, a spiritual other half of yourself. The ritual involves, I don't know how to say this politely. You have to, well, they say you have to get blissfully intimate with your other half. Once the honeymoon period is over, the caster then has to summon up and conquer unredeemed spirits of the infernal regions of hell to conquer them. And then they'll be able to master the spirit domain. That sounds like a lot of irredeemed spirits. I hope my angel might help out a little bit with that. This all sounds very complicated, so all things considered, maybe it's for the best that this one's locked away. Seems like heavy reading, not before bedtime. And if you're looking for more true tales of terror, fake frightening fribs, cursed relics, ancient evils, aliens, cryptids, conspiracies, ghouls, goblins, and pretty much everything spooky you can think of, Top 5 Scary is the place to be. Stay subscribed, but way more importantly, stay scared. Okay, let's keep going. Whole lot more video to get through. Number 4, Book of Soiga. The Book of Soiga, also known by a more complicated name, the Alderia Siva Soiga Vocor, is an occult text that hails back from the 15th century. I'm pretty sure just saying that name out loud in front of the camera, I probably caused a curse on The Office, so I'm sorry about that. This text would have been lost to time, just another forgotten cursed manuscript, if it weren't for the obsessive efforts of John Dee, a 16th century polymath who had his hands in just about every field of study. Polymath is a fancy word for a guy who studies just about everything, and Dee practiced chemistry, physics, astronomy, and also the occult. You know, there's always more to learn, right? Mr. D was particularly interested in contacting angels to learn the secrets of the universe. And this book contains a litany of recipes for magic spells and all sorts of writings on demonology and astrology, but most importantly, and what caught Mr. D's attention, is that the book is said to include the names and genealogies of all of heaven's angels. Dee believed that the book contained an ancient divine message written in a language spoken to by Adam, the true unspoiled word of God. That's a pretty big statement. Now, much like the Voynich manuscript, which I'll mention a little later in the video, so put a pin in that for now, it had 36 cryptic tables that remained undeciphered for centuries. Dee attempted at one point to crack the code with the help of a mystic who convinced Dee that he could channel the angels for him. Dee allegedly was so desperate to unlock the contents of this book that when his mystic told him it was part of the ritual that he be allowed a night with John Dee's wife, he agreed. That's the oldest trick in the book, man. The old "I'll let you talk to angels if I can go out with your wife" gamble. Ugh, can't believe you fell for it. Dee's wife would end up birthing a son, Theodore Dee, the fatherhood of which was disputed, to say the least. John Dee was never able to crack the code in his lifetime and decipher the Book of Soiga, and perhaps for the best, as it was said he was warned that man was never meant to uncover those secrets, and that knowledge would end his life. The book is now said to reside in the British Library, although digital copies are available. Read it at your own risk, and if somebody says they can translate it for you, just make sure you really read everything on the fine print in the contract cracked before you sign that, okay? Just looking out for you. Number 3, the Grand Grimoire. That is so fun to say. This next entry has been nicknamed the Gospel of Satan. So if you're looking for an indication as to whether or not this book is, evil, there you go. They had to put that on a sticker, put it on the cover right next to the Oprah's Book Club recommendation. This book is said to have originally been written by a man possessed by the devil sometime in the 16th century. It's an infamous occult text and is said to contain dark incantations, spells and rituals, tools on how to force demons to do one's bidding, and even some instructions for a little necromancy 101 for fledgling dead raisers. It's not all brimstone and hellfire though. There are also reports on how to make pacts with spirits for personal gain, rituals to win the lottery, talk to ghosts, make yourself invisible, and even adorably, how to win love. Never heard of a demon working to help someone fall in love. Now all that sounds cool, definitely. I know I would love to have like a little skeleton minion who could help me with chores, maybe be like my little buddy. I love playing a necromancer in Skyrim, but these things don't really work out if you don't know what you're doing. Take a look at Full Metal Alchemist, that didn't work, they didn't know what they were doing. Even opening this book is considered equivalent to selling your soul to the devil. Soon as you crack the spine, it's like signing the contract. Because of the book's nefarious reputation, the original copy of the manuscript has been sealed away inside the Vatican's secret archives, and not currently available to the public. So I don't think whatever they're listing on Amazon as the Grand Grimoire for $10 is the real Grand Grimoire. Number 2, the Voynich Manuscript. The Voynich Manuscript has got to be one of my favorite stories of a mysterious manuscript ever. I guess that's why I put it at number 2. Unlike a lot of entries on this list, it's actually very easy to come across a digital copy of the Voynich Manuscript. It's available to read online. The only trouble is reading it honestly probably won't do you a lick of good, since it's written in a language no one has ever heard of and there's no record of it ever having existed. Yale University has the entire thing up and available online if you're feeling confident enough that you can take a crack at it and feel like banging your head against a brick wall for a few hours. The book is a handwritten, hand-illustrated codex of 240 pages of pure mystery, featuring gorgeous illustrations and typography, and what the book is about is your guess is as good as mine, honestly. Carbon dating suggests that it stems from the 15th century, and analysis of the style of the text and illustrations within suggests that it could have been penned during the Italian Renaissance. But just about every single aspect of this thing is shrouded in mystery. We don't even know what it's truthfully called. The Voynich manuscript is the name it was given after the initial owner, Wilfred Voynich, purchased it in 1912 and brought it to public attention for the first time. Sorry, not the first owner, I'm sure several other people owned it before him. As such, the language inside the book is occasionally referred to as Voynichese. Now some pages are missing, lost to time completely, and the pages we do have are just a puzzle. Some are foldable sheets of various sizes, some pages have wondrously drawn diagrams or illustrations showing things like plants, some fictional, some real, and astrological symbols, drawings of people. Over the years, there have been several efforts to try and decode and document the book and figure out just what it is. A prevailing theory, admittedly a boring one, is that it's a guide to botany written in a mysterious script, a forgotten language, an uncrackable code, an incredibly convoluted hoax. Of course, with any good mystery, there are some wild theories. Some say the Voynich manuscript could be written from an extraterrestrial gifted to humanity, or written in demonic script perhaps, or that biblical language that we were mentioning in the book Soygas a few points ago. Like I said, it's available online, so I leave this up to you. If you manage to crack it, let us know down below in the comments. We're all clamoring for it. And number 1, the Codex Gigas. When it comes to cursed and demonic books, the Codex Gigas is one of the biggest ones around. Like, literally. Codex Gigas translates to giant book, which isn't exactly a scary name. When you see the size of this behemoth, it starts to make a little bit more sense. This thing is massive. 2 feet long. Now, giant, oversized, illuminated manuscripts were pretty common around the area the book was penned, but this one stood out for its immense size and the dark rumors surrounding the supposedly cursed text. Don't even try reading this thing, just lifting it will give you a hernia. That's the curse. It's occasionally been dubbed Satan's Bible due to the legend surrounding its origin. It's a good story, so get cozy. Supposedly, the legend goes that a monk by the name of Herman the Recluse, which is also what they used to call me, was condemned to death for heresy and was to be walled up alive and starved. In a desperate plea to save himself, Herman tried to convince the prior and the abbot as a whole that if he could pen a manuscript to honor God's glory, and that it would contain all of human knowledge and all of human history in one book, and if he could pen it in one night, he would be let free. The abbot agreed, thinking this was, of course, impossible. Herman wrote until midnight, wearing his fingertips down, and in a moment of desperation, made a prayer to Lucifer and asked for his eternal soul in exchange for the book's completion in order to repent for his sins. I totally get it. You know, I gotta be honest, I have done some pretty nutso stuff trying to make sure my scripts get in time for deadline. Haven't quite sold my soul to the devil yet. I usually just rail Red Bulls, but I'd probably make a similar deal under a similar deadline. Now, I don't want to poke any holes in Herman's logic here, but I will say maybe selling your soul to the devil is part of the reason you got into this mess in the first place, because that does sound a little bit like heresy, but it's not my place to judge. I'm not an archdeacon. A variation of the legend states that Herman worked for years on the manuscript, day and night, but still was unable to complete it in his lifetime and asked for the devil's assistance. Anyway, no matter the story, the legend states that Satan signed the Bible with a particularly terrifying illustration of himself. I mean, take a look at it, it's horrifying looking. The book contains a birth of information. Like they said, it was supposed to be everything humanity had attained up to that point in one big book. These days, the Codex Gigas is preserved in the Natural Museum in Sweden, where you can admire the penmanship of Herman the Recluse and his ghost author Satan.
Number 5, The Complete Book of Demonolatry. Written by S. Connolly, it boasts telling the reader how to discover powerful rites, magic, and practices that honor Satan and the demons. This text, used by the traditional demonolatry priesthood to train members of their covens, is part workbook, part textbook, and part reference book. It includes thorough chapters on demonolatry, history, demonic holy days, offerings, prayers, sigils, religious rites, and an introduction to demonolatry magic. Okay, this might be the first book I'm tempted to buy for myself. If only just to learn more about like demonology history from somebody that isn't, like Ed Warren for once. I love the Warrens and their work, but at the same time it would be neat to learn from a lens that isn't, as biased in Catholicism. Alright, let's see what else it advertises. Learn how and why the ends, demonolatry sigils, ascension, and many other demonolatry methods have become standard practice among many theistic Satanists. It claims to guide students from pre-initiate to adept, and even delves into the depths of demonolatry, schmex magic, necromancy, scarlet elixir rites, and red fluid sacrifice. See, that last phrase I can do without, but let me know what y'all think in the comments. Should I bother investing in it or not? Now, before anybody asks, well, why should you leave this book alone on Halloween? That just so happens to be when the veil between our world and the spirit world is the thinnest, and you don't want to accidentally summon a demon when you're just learning how to. Not a fun idea. Number 4, Mein Kampf. Alrighty folks, this is where I'm using demonic as more as an adjective instead of actually talking about demons. Also, this is a book that should never be consumed in general. More like exist in a museum so that we keep, don't turn into a case of those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. This is an autobiography of Germany's infamous, actually Austrian-born dictator whose name I can't say on here. Its title means my struggle or battle because, organizing genocide is hard work. Didn't you know? Everybody clap for this man's tenacity, his perseverance, his sheer determination. Hard work makes dreams come true, don't you know? Ugh, the prick. The book, released in 2 volumes, is in reality the evil dictator's case for anti-Semitism. He outlines exactly how he came to be as he was, before putting forth his racial and political views and describing his vision for the future of Germany. From a technical point of view, this book is apparently overly long, repetitious, and poorly written. Seeing as it was written by one of the world's most evil men in history, it was deemed just cause for banning it in Austria and Russia. Interestingly enough, Germany held the copyright over this book until 2016. Until then, printing and dissemination of the work was strictly banned. But now that it's, in the public domain, Germany has lifted the ban and actually released a new edition with nearly 2,000 pages and 3,500 annotated notes. I'm not sure this particular book should be available, simply because it was written by the man I cannot name. The fact that he killed 6 million people for no fault of their own is unforgivable enough, but the conditions he kept them and many more in is making me sick to my stomach. So we're gonna move on before I start venting and get off topic today. Number 3, The Grand Grimoire. It is a black magic grimoire, and for reference, a grimoire is a textbook of magic that typically includes instructions on how to create magical objects like talismans and amulets, how to perform magical spells, charms, and divination, and how to summon or invoke supernatural entities such as angels, spirits, deities, and demons. In many cases, the books themselves are believed to be imbued with magical powers, although in many cultures, other sacred texts that are not grimoires, such as the Bible, have been believed to have supernatural properties intrinsically. The only contents found in a grimoire would be information on spells, rituals, the preparation of magical tools, and lists of ingredients and their magical correspondences. In this manner, while all books on magic could be thought of as grimoires, not all magical books should be thought of as grimoires. Different editions date the specific one to 1521, 22, or even as early as 1421, but it was probably written during the early 19th century. Some experts suggest that 1702 is when the first edition may have been created, and a Bibliothèque Bleue version, similar to a chapter book, of the text might have been published in 1750. The introductory chapter was authored by Antonio Veneciana da Rabina, who gathered which is information from the original writings of King Solomon. Much of the material of this grimoire derives from the Key of Solomon and the Lesser Key of Solomon, which are grimoires attributed to the king of the same name. Also known as Le Dragon Rouge or the Red Dragon, this book contains instructions on how to summon Lucifer or Lucifer Focal for the purpose of forming a deal with the devil. The 19th century French occultist Eliphas Lévy, author of Dogmes et Rituels de la Haute Magie, claimed the contemporary edition of Le Dragon Rouge was a counterfeit of a true older Grand Grimoire. And I love petty historical spats. Once again, the overall work is divided into 2 books. So the first book contains instructions for summoning a demon and the construction of tools with which to force a demon to do one's bidding. The second book is divided further into 2 parts, the Sanctum Regnum and Secrets de l'Art Magique du Grand Grimoire. The Sanctum Regnum contains instructions for making a pact with the demon, allowing one to command the spirit without the tools required by book 1, but at greater risk. Secrets contain secret spells and rituals one can employ after having performed the ritual of the first book. Now, some editions contain a short text between the 2 parts, known as Le Secret Magique ou Le Grand Art de pouvoir parler aux morts, or in English, the magic secret or the grand art of being able to speak with the dead, which deals with necromancy. The book describes several demons as well as the rituals to summon them in order to make a pact with them. It also details several spells for winning a lottery, talking to spirits, being loved by somebody else, making oneself invisible, and more. This book mentions 3 greater demons, which are similarly prioritized in the Grimorium Verum. Sidebar: in the English translation of the work, the demons are referenced by the more generic term of spirits, which is a term I know some modern Satanists prefer. The demons that are mentioned are the Emperor Lucifer, Prince Beelzebub, and the Grand Duke Astaroth. Now, this work also makes mention of 6 lesser demons, and of course I'll mention them all. Lucifer Focal, Prime Minister, Satan Nachia, Commander-in-Chief, Aglia Rept, Commandant, Fleuretti, Lieutenant General, Sargatanas, Brigadier Major, Nebulos, Marshal, and Inspector General. I had fun with that. Number 2, the Grimorium Verum. I just mentioned this, didn't I? The Grimorium Verum, which is Latin for true grimoire, is an 18th century grimoire attributed to one Ali Bek the Egyptian of Memphis, who wrote it in 1517, and like many grimoires, it claims a tradition originating with King Solomon. This grimoire is actually not a translation of an earlier work, with its original appearing in French or Italian in the mid-18th century, as noted by A.E. Waite, who discussed the work in his book of ceremonial magic in 1911, stating the date specified in the title of the Grimorium Verum is undeniably fraudulent since the work belongs to the middle of the 18th century and Memphis is Rome. One version of the grimoire was included as the Clavicles of King Solomon Book 3 in one of the French manuscripts S. L. MacGregor Mathers incorporated in his version of the Key of Solomon, but it was omitted from the key with its explanation. At the end there are some short extracts from the Grimorium Verum with the seals of evil spirits, which, as they do not belong to the Key of Solomon proper, I have not given, for the evident classification of the key is in 2 books and no more. Idris Shah also published some of it in the Secret Lore of Magic, Book of the Sorcerers in 1957. Alrighty, time to break down all 4 books that you should not be touching on Halloween. Book 1 is described as concerning the character of demons, particularly the superior spirits of Lucifer, Beelzebub, Astaroth, while also including the many inferior spirits below them and their invoking sigils. Alright, who wants to hear about what all the lesser spirits can do? Claudic has the power to bring money to those who make a pact with them. Musicin has power over important people and politicians. Freemost has power over women. Yeah, okay, pal. Klepoth can help you experience all sorts of dreams and visions. Kill can manifest dramatic situations and changes. Mersild has dominion over long and short distance travel. Klistert can create confusion or enlightenment depending on what you need or want. Sir Chad can make you see all sorts of natural and supernatural creatures. Hickpax can make a person think of you, no matter how far distant they may be. Humutz can bring you any book you desire. Siegel will cause all sorts of prodigies to appear. Fruxisier can teach you the art of necromancy. Guland causes all illnesses. Sergat can create every kind of opportunity for advancement. Morale can help you move about unseen. Frutimier prepares all kinds of feasts for you. Hoi Tigaras causes sleep in the case of some and insomnia in others, and hey, tempting, because I could use a good night's sleep right about now. Book 2 is simply described as being of planetary hours, so I'll leave it up to y'all to interpret what you think it means. Book 3 is the preparation of the operator, or more simply put, how to prepare for summoning. A more modern title could be Demon Summoning for Dummies, or How to Summon a Demon 101. Book 4 contains the Sanctum Regnum, also called the Royalty of Spirits, or the Little Key of Solomon, a most learned Hebraic necromancer and rabbi. This book contains various combinations of characters whereby the powers can be invoked or brought forth whensoever you may wish, each according to his faculty. Long story short, it's a very descriptive and thorough demon summoning Bible, if you will. Once again, I personally do not recommend summoning demons, but if you really feel like you must. This feels like it would produce safer outcomes than say like a random YouTube ritual or Ouija board, but still, stay away on Halloween. You don't know what's gonna happen, I don't know what's gonna happen, it's not fun. Number 1, The 120 Days of Sodom. Written in Bastille during the French Revolution, the author was interrupted when the prison was stormed by insurgents and never finished the story. But 120 Days remains amongst the most notorious works of literature, featuring depraved fetishes, red fluid-soaked sexual group parties, torment, and under the age of consent, bad, icky schmecks thing. Look, I'd say the actual terms if I could. Trust me, it would make my life so much easier, but I've gotta play by the interweb rules. Described as very sexual and erotic, its plot revolves around the activities of 4 wealthy libertine men who spend 4 months seeking out the ultimate sexual gratification through group sex fun parties, sealing themselves away in an inaccessible castle in the heart of the Black Forest in Germany with 4 madams and a harem of 36 victims, mostly young people. The madams relate stories of their most memorable clients, whose crimes and punishments inspire the libertines to likewise and increasingly harm their victims to their eventual deaths. Now, the novel was never completed. Its first chapter was written according to Say's written plan, but the subsequent chapters are in the form of rough drafts and notes, often consisting of graphic descriptions of the novel scenes. The book was first published in Germany back in 1904, and then banned across Europe for most of the 20th century. A 1975 film adaptation by Pier Paolo Pasolini was also banned in several countries. South Korea has banned the book twice this century, and now it can be sold there only in a sealed plastic cover to adults 19 or over. Once again, don't read it. In 5th place is the youngest person on our list. To avoid getting dinged, I'll just say her age was in the lower single digits. Madeline was on a vacation in Portugal from the UK in May of 2007 with her parents Kate and Gary McCann, her even younger twin siblings, and a group of family friends. The McCann offspring had been left asleep at 8:30 in the ground floor apartment while their parents dined with friends in a restaurant less than 200 feet away. The parents checked on the children throughout the evening until Kate discovered Madeline was missing around 10 p.m. Over the following weeks, particularly after misinterpreting a British DNA analysis, the Portuguese police came to believe that Madeline had passed an accident in the apartment and her parents had covered it up. The McCanns were given suspect status in September, which was lifted when the Portugal's Attorney General archived the case in July of 2008 due to a lack of evidence. Madeline's parents continued the investigation using private detectives until Scotland Yard opened its own inquiry, titled Operation Grange, in 2011. The senior investigating officer announced that he was treating the disappearance as a criminal act by a stranger, most likely a planned abduction or burglary gone wrong. In 2013, Scotland Yard released images of men they wanted to trace, including one of a man seen carrying a child towards the beach on the night that Madeline vanished. Shortly after this, and rather conveniently, Portuguese police reopened their inquiry. Operation Grange was scaled back in 2015, but the remaining detectives continue to pursue a small number of inquiries described as significant. As of the time of filming this video, there has been no clear answer as to what happened that night, or who took Madeline. Many theories have emerged, including the possibility that Madeline left the apartment by herself and was abducted by a passerby or fell into one of the open construction sites nearby. But according to her mother, Madeline would have had to open the unlocked patio doors, close the curtains behind her, close the door again, open and close the child gate at the top of the stairs, then open and close the gate leading to the street, which was unlikely with her capabilities at the time. Heck, even I'm exhausted thinking about that. My own 2 cents on this involve wondering, A, why the patio doors would be unlocked, and why only Madeline went missing and not all 3 offspring. Dang suspicious all around if you ask me. And since you're here, I'm assuming you're asking me. In 4th place, we have Cameron Remmer. On September 29th of 2011, 29-year-old Cameron left his home in Encinitas, California for a business trip to San Francisco and checked into the Fairmount Hotel with plans to remain in the city for about a month in hopes of expanding his medical marijuana business. On the evening of October 6th, one of Cameron's friends in Arizona received a strange phone call from him asking for money to pay for a room. When the friend agreed to the request, Cameron suddenly changed his mind and said he found a place to stay. It turned out that Cameron was drinking very heavily at the Fairmount that night, and the hotel had asked him to leave. Before he left, Cameron checked his bags in with the hotel and claimed he would return to pick them up later. He stayed true to his word, returning 3 days later, incoherent and disoriented, wearing a completely different shoe on each foot. He was able to get into his former room without retrieving his bags, and this was the last anyone saw of him. After Cameron was reported missing, his bags were finally opened to reveal over 60 vials of medical something, along with $30,000 in cash. There have since been numerous unconfirmed sightings of a disheveled Cameron wandering around San Francisco, leading to speculation that he suffered a psychotic break and is now a homeless transient. But I wonder, could his disappearance be connected to the large quantity of something and the cash he had with him? Until he's found, We shall never know. In third place, time to visit the Cecil Hotel. Yes, I know, I've talked about this before, because it's just got such a terrifyingly fascinating history. So many lives have met their end there, and it's actually undergone an attempted rebrand in recent years to try and change the reputation it holds, with no luck. Canadian tourist Elisa Lam was enjoying a lovely vacation to Los Angeles in the beginning of 2013, having chosen to stay in the Cecil Hotel for its reasonable pricing, while she took in the sights, including a trip to the San Diego Zoo and a taping of Conan, all of which she documented on social media. Elisa was initially assigned a shared room on the hotel's 5th floor, but her roommates complained about odd behavior and she was moved to a room of her own after just 2 days. According to Amy Price, the manager of the Cecil Hotel, at the time of Elisa's disappearance, she was leaving notes for her roommates that said, "Go home" and "Go away," and would lock the door to the room and require a password for entry. Elisa contacted her parents in British Columbia daily while traveling, up until the day she disappeared. On January 31st of 2013, the day she was scheduled to, check out of the Cecil, her parents didn't hear from her and called the Los Angeles Police Department and made the decision to fly to LA themselves. Katie Orphan, manager of the last bookstore, was the only person who recalled seeing her that day, describing her as outgoing, lively, and very friendly while purchasing gifts to bring home to her family. Katie recalled a conversation they had shared about how heavy certain books would be to carry around for a day. Police searched the hotel to the extent that they legally could. They searched Elisa's room and had dogs go through the building, including the rooftop, but the dogs were unsuccessful in detecting her scent. Since the police didn't have probable cause, that any sort of crime had been committed, they didn't search every room. On February 6th, a week after Elisa had last been seen, the LAPD finally decided more help was needed. Go figure. Flyers with her image were posted in the neighborhood and online. Interest in her disappearance increased on February 13th when the LAPD released security camera footage of her behaving erratically in a hotel elevator on the day she was last seen alive, with the footage going viral. During this search for our lovely missing girl, guests at the hotel began complaining about low water pressure, with some claiming their water was black in color and had an unusual taste. On the morning of February 19th, Santiago Lopez, a hotel maintenance worker, found her body in one of 4,000-gallon tanks located on the roof that provided water to guest rooms, a kitchen, and a coffee shop. Pardon me, I'm a little nauseous. Through the open hatch, he saw Elisa lying face up in the water. The tank was drained and cut open since its maintenance hatch was too small to accommodate equipment needed to remove the body, leading many people to wonder just how she got in there in the first place. Now, while I'm not going to go into detail about what her body looked like, and I'm questioning why that information in such precision is easily found public knowledge, there was no evidence of physical trauma, self-ending, intercourse, or force. Toxicology tests showed traces consistent with prescription medication found amongst her belongings, plus non-prescription drugs, like ibuprofen. So normal stuff in her system. A very small quantity of alcohol was present, but no other recreational drugs. Yes, I know, her body was eventually found, but she did vanish for long enough to have it count for today's list. In second place, we have Jessica Kinsey. Being a young adult of school-attending age, she lived with her family southwest of St. Louis in the close-knit community of Union. This tale begins on Boxing Day of 1995, when she wanted to go to a friend's house to show off her new winter wear she had been gifted, and her parents, who worked from home, allowed her to head off. At 2 p.m., she called her mother, Mary Klein, to let her know that she was staying away for a few more hours, promising to call back around 5 if she was going to stay for supper. Jessica did not call home, and her family never saw her ever again. At 5:30 p.m., her mother, Mary, called the friend's mother, who told her that Jimmy Hopkins, aged 23, picked up Jessica, and that Jessica had asked her to let Mary know, but the friend's mom had totally forgotten. Mary had known Jimmy since he was 11, when he moved to Union to live with his mother, and he was a close friend to the entire family. Mary called the Union Police Department to report her daughter missing when Jessica failed to return home because she didn't trust Jimmy's intention with her daughter. So he might have been a close family friend, but it's the kind of close family friend that you just sort of keep at a distance. Mark Henderson told the police that Jimmy paid him to drive himself and Jessica to Cloverdale, Indiana, stating that Jessica was quiet in the car's back seat and kept her head down the entire trip. Jimmy had told Mark that the end goal for the trip was to go to Niagara Falls to get married, having shown Mark his grandmother's engagement ring as proof, saying they had to meet with a friend in Cloverdale who would help them the rest of the way. Once in Cloverdale, the trio checked into the Dollar Inn Motel with Jessica and Jimmy in room 222, while Mark stayed next door in room 224. Mark first said he heard a lot of banging noises coming from the room in the middle of the night that kind of sounded like a body hitting the wall. Out of concern, he went and knocked on the door and received no response for about 5 minutes. And then Jimmy hollered out that everything was fine, simply that he and Jessica were having rough intercourse. Mark later changed his story, saying that Jimmy came to the door fully dressed, but blocked his view of the room and would not let him inside. Which version do you believe? The most important thing, though, is that he never saw Jessica. When he went to retrieve the duo the following morning, they had disappeared, along with his car. Mark reported the vehicle stolen to the Cloverdale police, but they failed to enter the report into the National Crime Information Center database for over 30 days. On December 27th, Jimmy sold the wedding rings at a pawn shop in Paris, Tennessee, so 300 miles southwest of Cloverdale, and about a month after Jessica's disappearance, Mark's vehicle turned up across the country in Compton, California, after Cloverdale police had finally entered the car into the NCIC. An unidentified black male dropped the car off at a garage on January 6th of 1996. We don't know anything more about him. The following spring, police learned that another acquaintance of Jimmy's said he had seen him with a girl matching Jessica's description, with the investigators discovering that he worked at a yogurt shop in Los Angeles. The shop's owner confirmed to the police that a young girl had often visited the shop while Jimmy worked a shift. Jimmy returned to Missouri alone in June of 1996 and hooked up with his second wife, Anna. He refused to cooperate with the police investigating Jessica's disappearance. It wasn't until 2005 when police tried speaking to Jimmy, off the record, with the police chief afterwards claiming he was certain Jimmy had ended Jessica's life, but couldn't use anything he said in the session because officers had not read him his Miranda rights. Okay, my brain is boggled. Whatever was said between Jimmy and the police chief is still unknown. Police believe that someone else has vital information about Jessica's disappearance and have made public appeals over the years. However, no one's come forward. Oh, and before anyone wants to try to talk to Jimmy ever again, he took his own life in 2008, so he's not talking anymore. Not that he ever really was in the first place. In first place, we end our list with Claudia Kershak. In May of 2000, New York-based travel writers Claudia and Tanya were traveling to Havana, Cuba on a business trip, but found the trip suddenly canceled during their layover in Negril, Jamaica. While disappointed, the duo were determined to make the most of it. At a resort in Negril, Claudia made friends with Anthony Grant, one of the resort's bartenders. She was a big fan of reggae music, and Anthony reportedly offered to take her to a nearby club. Now, Tanya managed to book a flight home and agreed to meet up with Claudia when she got back to New York City. A lifeguard was reportedly the last person to see Claudia the next afternoon, when she was walking on a local beach far away from the resort. On June 2nd, Claudia's parents were notified that she hadn't shown up for work in New York and contacted the resort in Jamaica. By this point, hotel maids had reported Claudia missing after noticing she had not slept in her bed for several days, but all of her belongings were still in her room. Her passport, credit card, cell phone, and almost $200 in cash were recovered from the hotel safe, right where she had left them. Claudia's mom, Mary, told the press that Claudia was a very organized person and would have brought her belongings with her had she planned any sort of excursion or variance in her trip. As soon as they found out their daughter was missing, Claudia's parents were on the next plane to Jamaica, but their attempts to find out what happened to their daughter hit one dead end after another, beginning at the resort where Claudia had been staying. As a security precaution, the license plates of all vehicles entering and leaving the resort should have been carefully recorded in a logbook. Conveniently, the logbook for the month that Claudia disappeared was missing. Then a videotape from a surveillance camera mounted near Claudia's room had been recorded over. Oh, finally, the room where Claudia stayed was cleared by housekeeping and hotel security before it could be processed for clues. Seems a little sus. Just a smidge. Now, frustrated by the progress of the investigation, Claudia's parents brought in the FBI and an American search and rescue team. Rightfully so. According to a canine handler on the case, his dog tracked Claudia's scent to the home of Anthony Grant, that bartender I mentioned a moment ago. At Anthony's home, the dog hit the scent on a pair of boots, a pair of gloves, a knife. Oh, and it found Claudia's scent in the trunk and back seat of Anthony's car. Anthony was investigated and polygraphed, but the results were inconclusive. The FBI stated that they interviewed Anthony for several weeks, but they don't consider him a suspect. Now, the parents have struggled to keep the search for Claudia alive, despite dwindling leads and diminishing support, and are still offering a $50,000 reward for answers. I hope they get some.